first 4 years. I thought 17, 18, 19. I mean, 17, he should have been the MVP until he got hurt. 18 and 19, he was a top 10 guy in my mind, no question. But last year, I don't know what happened. I mean, I thought he was the worst quarterback in the NFL.
Let's get into a guy who's been into many of these camps from the Ross Tucker podcast, our dear friend Ross Tucker, and we appreciate him coming aboard. And Ross, I throw this out to everybody. You know, I was not surprised. Phil Simms was on with us the other day, and he wasn't surprised. You know, today, and I don't want to sound like old guy, get off my lawn, dude, but, I mean, you just don't have the physical contact that you used to have back in the day when you're going through two-a-days. And that's why you see a lot of lower extremity injuries to a lot of these players, because they're physically ready to go, but they're not really football ready to go. Is that fair?
Yeah, I've heard that theory, Cilio. I'm not sure I buy it. Now, the first part about it, I agree wholeheartedly. I mean, I was at Eagles camp on Monday. I do their preseason games, and the first 4 days, they were no pads, right? Then they got an off day. Then I was there, and they were having their 5th day of no pads. And then yesterday was their first day in pads. And I guess today is their 2nd day. It's a lot different than it was when you played, certainly when I played. I think it's better in the sense that they're not beating the guys' bodies up as much. They can hopefully make it through the 17-game season better. You know, they can have longer careers. You know, I don't think we needed to do, you know, my rookie year with Marty Schottenheimer, Cilio, I don't think we needed to do 2-3 hour practices, full pads every day for the first 12, 13 days. I mean, I tore my right MCL. I broke my left hand. I remember saying to my parents, like, I'm only doing 1 year. Like, if I make it, I'm only doing 1 year. Like, I just couldn't believe it. I was like, I don't know how these guys are making it. Both those things happened my rookie training camp. But I just don't think, look, it was good for me because it was like only the strong survive, right? Yeah. Like mentally tough. And I think that was to my advantage. But, you know, looking back on it now, I don't know that having those 2 practices for the first 12 days, and a lot of guys were getting hurt, I don't know that really helped them decide who made the team or not. I'm not sure what they really got out of that.
I tell you, man, I had 3-a-days with Ray Perkins, and hey, Ross, I'm laying there going for the third practice. We had 2 weeks of this, and I'm going like this. There's not a guy out here who's going to give full max effort because he can't. More guys are going to get hurt, and to your point, you were right on with that. Let me slide into this. I talked to Frank Wright last Friday. You know, I reached out to him, Ross, because of the COVID scenario. And he and I have been friends a long time, over 30 years. And, you know, I posted on Friday that they were going to have probably surgery on Carson Wentz's foot, and they end up coming to that conclusion. Do you agree right now that Chris Ballard and Frank Reich have maybe 3 decisions to make, or 3 choices that they can go, 3 avenues? Phillip Rivers, stay in-house, trade for Foles, or the outlier, and I'm not going Andrew Luck, I don't know, maybe you call Drew Brees. I mean, if you look at that first part of that season, you could easily be 1-7 by the time you get to the Jets game. How do you think they should go about this?
Yeah, it's funny that you say that, because I actually interviewed Greg Cosell today, the NFL Films guru, for my show, the Ross Tucker podcast, and he thinks that they should go with JAKIB over a guy like Nick Foles. And I guess I tend to agree with him. I mean, I do agree that there are 3 plausible scenarios: Rivers or some other retired old guy, Foles or trade for somebody else, or Eason. You know, they drafted Eason in the 4th round last year. He came in, he's got a lot of physical ability. He's been in the system for a year. He's going to get all these reps for the next few weeks. Like, let him play. Let him play. Now, the reality is, I think, Cilio, they're going to let him play a bunch in the first preseason game, maybe the second. And if it's going pretty well, I think they'll stay in pat. If there are major concerns, I think they'll either get Nick Foles in because he obviously is a guy that knows Reich's system very well and Reich knows him very well, or they get the bat phone and call up Phillip Rivers. I mean, listen, I know Phillip Rivers is coaching high school football. I got it, and that's what he wants to do. But this is a unique scenario. I'm pretty confident the assistant coach could handle it for the first 3 or 4 weeks while Rivers is starting for the Indianapolis Colts. Or, the flip side is, what about a couple years ago, the Josh McCown plan? I mean, they could have Rivers be on every Zoom meeting during the week.
Yeah.
And then Friday night after his high school game, take the private jet up to Indy. He's there for Saturday walkthrough. Sunday he plays, flies back. I mean, is it ideal? No. Is it maybe going to give you better results than JAKIB? Yeah, maybe.
How about this too for Chris Ballard, the GM? Maybe history looks like it may repeat itself here like it did in Philly. Think about this for a second, Ross. I mean, he doesn't even make it through the first week of the season or preseason, and that's Carson Wentz. Do you now look at this potentially, because GMs look down the line? If you're looking into the future and you're going to kind of rub the crystal ball here, do you go into the draft, say you do get out to 1-7 and you hold Pat Eason, and then you decide not to put Wentz on the field because there's no point in putting him on the field if you're 1-7. That pick's not going to become a first rounder for the Eagles anyway. It's going to be a 2. So you're sitting there and you're kind of maybe going to pick around 15. I don't know, the kid from North Carolina, do you go into the draft next year and just like what they did up in San Francisco, do you look at a quarterback knowing that the history, Ross, a rib injury, MCL, ACL, concussion, foot injury. This guy hasn't been in the league 20 years. This guy's been in the league like a little bit over a handful of years. What do you do if you're Ballard?
Missed the whole preseason his rookie year with a back too. I would say if you're Ballard, now listen, let's see when Wentz comes back. Let's see how he plays. Ballard's smart enough to know he doesn't need to make any of these decisions now. However, it's probably front office malpractice if they don't at least start to consider their quarterback options down the line, because you have to look at Carson's injury history and combine that with how poorly he played last year. I mean, Cilio, I do Eagles pregame, and I really liked the guy. And I thought his first 4 years, I thought 17, 18, 19, 17, he should have been the MVP until he got hurt. 18 and 19, he was a top 10 guy in my mind, no question. But last year, I don't know what happened. I thought he was the worst quarterback in the NFL. Now, there were major issues around him at receiver, on the offensive line. I get that. But Cilio, he led the NFL in sacks and interceptions and didn't play the last 4 games. Think about other sports, baseball and basketball. You don't play 25% of the games and still lead the league in 2 categories? It's not good.
Ross, do you think that Carson Wentz trusted in Philadelphia Frank Reich more than he did Doug Peterson?
It's tough to say that because I'll tell you what, with Reich, it was like all positive. And then Reich leaves, and then Wentz comes, and then Wentz is still there. It was a little bit more up and down. And part of that was Carson. Part of it was the team around him wasn't as good. But even the next year, he got hurt, and Foles had to come in again. So I think it was the situation more than trusting any coach. Listen, if the coach, when you were at Miami, right, winning national championships, and then Jimmy Johnson leaves and Erickson comes in and you guys stunk and you played worse after that, you would trust Jimmy more than you would Erickson, right? Like
completely.
But part of that, I think, is just because of how Wentz played before Reich left and then the injuries.
Do you think Zach Ertz is a top 10 tight end still, and that's why the Eagles are holding on to him still? Do you think that he'll be on the opening day roster? I know Howie has made that point that it looks like he may be on the opening day roster, or do you think it's going to be somebody like Buffalo or maybe even Jacksonville to maybe get another component down there for Trevor Lawrence to try to be able to find him some more weapons? because obviously they haven't gotten in return what they're looking for. They want to pick, it looks like, and that's why they've kept him. How do you see that playing out?
Well, think of it this way, right? Last year at this time, Ertz was not happy because both Kittle and Kelsey had gotten new contracts. Ertz wanted a new contract. Ertz was talked about in the same vein as those guys. Now, I think most people had it Kittle 1, Kelsey 2, or Kelsey 1, Kittle 2. But then Ertz was like somewhere 3, 4, or 5. I don't know which one he was, Silio, but he was one of them, 3, 4, 5. He was talked about as, well, his contract should be around what theirs are, blah, blah, blah. And last year was a disaster for him and the rest of the team. But I don't know how you go from being talked about as a top 3 or 4, certainly top 5 guy, and then now not be a top 10 guy. I just don't believe – what is he, 30 years old? I just don't believe he drop off that much of a cliff. He had an injury last year, but his game is not like a speed game. I mean, his game is – he is super smart, super savvy, and I really believe that that should sustain for years to come.
I think he's a Jason Witten type guy.
Yes.
You know, I think he's like that guy. He's not going to be outstanding in the run game, but he's going to be a guy, like you said, that's going to grit it out, run the seam well. He's going to beat most linebackers in the league. And the quarterback play, as you've been saying here, Ross, that's the thing that's dipped off. Couple last questions here for you. Do you agree that the next head football coach in Tampa Bay is going to be Todd Bowles?
Boy, at this point, it certainly seems like it, right? With the deal they just gave him, although Arians keeps talking like he's not going anywhere anytime soon. And if you're Arians, why would you? I mean, it's the best team he's ever coached. So that's a tough one to answer. I think the Bucs would like that, but I think it'd be surprising if somebody didn't offer Bowles a job after this year, and then it'll be up to Bowles whether he wants to do it or not.
You know, the San Francisco story, finally here, Ross, the San Francisco story, you're hearing John Lynch, you're hearing Kyle Shanahan now. Holy cow, man. And you know this like every player does. And what they're doing is, in my opinion, what John Lynch is doing, I think he's trying to be a salesman to the league right now. Trey's playing so well. This is not like Green Bay with Jordan Love. Our guy's ready to play. If you want to come and get Jimmy Garoppolo, instead of coming with a 2, you better roll in here with a 1 because we're not giving him up. He looks the best. You know, you're overselling the guy for a reason because you're trying to up the value. You think they're selling and putting him out there for sale for somebody to try to come and grab him because you know people are going to panic and they're going to want a quarterback. The history obviously is an issue when it comes to his health, but you're talking about a 25-8 guy counting the playoffs that if he's healthy, he's a winner. What do you do there if you're 49erville?
Yeah, so, you know, when a guy like John Lynch goes on Adam Schefter's podcast and says that this is the best Jimmy G's ever played, in August here, my antenna goes up, bro. I mean, I've been doing this. I retired in 08. My rookie year was 01. I've been doing this a decently long time now. I don't really believe in coincidences. You know, when teams are really talking up a guy, that's usually when they're really trying to move him to get something in return. So I don't know. It's just the way that sounds. I don't know if Jimmy G's long for San Fran. You know, it's kind of like the Bears. Have you ever seen a third-string quarterback have a press conference?
Never.
I mean, here's a third-string quarterback have a press conference like Nick Foles did the other day. I mean,
hey, Ross, have you ever seen a player in another uniform, politician, for a job somewhere else? I'm watching this thing. I'm going, he's a member of the Bears, right? I was stunned when I saw that.
It will. I've never seen anything like it. And look, the Bears are trying to get out of that contract. I don't blame them. It was just hilarious. I mean, the coincidence of Carson Wentz having surgery, today's media availability, the press conference will be Nick Foles. It's just like, it's uncanny, man.
Hey, finally, I'll leave you with this. You talk about not buying anything and antennas going up. We used to play against Lou Holtz all the time when he was at Notre Dame. Just Miami team. 11-0. And I go, Lou, you're undefeated. You're undefeated. Don't give me that. These guys are the best and the fastest guys I've ever. Oh, I don't know how we're going to do it. And you're going like this. Dude, you're 10-0. Ross, I love you, brother. Ross Tucker Podcast, everyone. Make sure you check it out. Ross, tell them how they can find it.
Yeah, certainly. Just follow me on social media, whether it's Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, whatever, at Ross Tucker NFL. And then it's the same place all the other podcasts are. I got a sports betting one, Even Money, a fantasy one, Fantasy Feast. Whatever you need for your football fix, I got it. Gosh, I sound like a drug dealer. Anyway, like the guys you play with at the U back in the 80s, right, Cilio? RossTucker.com.
Thank you, brother. Love you, man. I appreciate you doing it.
All right, see ya.
You got it, man. Ross Tucker, man. We'll take a brief time out.